Hello, my dear English learners. Welcome back to English Practice with Jack Ma. I'm Jack Ma, and I'm truly so happy to have you here with me today. If this is your first time here, then let me warmly welcome you. Please feel relaxed and comfortable. You do not need perfect English to join this lesson. You only need a little time, a little patience, and the willingness to learn, and I'll be here to guide you gently, step by step, every single day. We upload a new English learning video every day, so you can keep practicing in a calm, easy, and consistent way without pressure. Today, I want you to think of this lesson as a cozy English speaking session. Just you and me, learning together in a simple and peaceful way. There is no need to hurry, and there is no need to feel nervous. In this lesson, we are going to work on your B1 and B2 daily English fluency, so you can speak more naturally, more clearly, and with more confidence in real-life situations. If you can, please take a pen and some paper and keep them near you. It's not a rule, of course, but it can really help you remember useful phrases, sentence patterns, and new expressions more easily. And it can also help you feel more confident as you practice. Now, today's topic is all about daily English fluency speaking practice. And that means we are going to focus on the kind of English you can truly use in everyday life, the kind of English that helps you speak in conversations, express your thoughts more smoothly, respond more naturally, and feel more comfortable when talking to other people. Sometimes B1 and B2 learners already know many words, but they still feel one slow and natural way. That will gentle practice exactly that. So go through realistically practice exactly that. We'll go through real-life examples that sound natural in conversation, the kind of English people really use every day. Together, we'll notice how ideas connect smoothly, and you'll learn useful phrases to sentence flow. We'll notice about daily routine in your own speaking. Plans, again, daily routines. Flangs, talking about daily routines, simple decisions, and many other situations, small problems in normal life. You'll also discover fluency. That fluency is not only about speaking fast. It is about speaking clearly, not comfortably. It is about knowing how to continue your thought, how to react in the moment, how to small and narrative. So by the end of this lesson, I want you to feel calm and encouraged and say to yourself, yes. Before we begin, may I ask you for one step at a time. If you enjoy learning English with me in this calm and friendly way, please subscribe and press the bell icon too. That way, you won't miss our daily lessons. And it also supports me so I can keep creating these gentle lessons for you. Thank you so much. Truly, I really appreciate it. All right then, take a nice, comfortable breath, relax your shoulders, keep your pen and paper ready nearby, and let's begin. Slowly, clearly, and together. Now let's begin with something very important. Many English learners think fluency means using difficult words, but that is not true at all. Real fluency usually comes from saying simple things in a smooth, clear, natural way. And that is exactly what we are going to practice together today. When you wake up in the morning and start your day, you usually do not need very advanced English. You just need natural English. You need to know how to say what you feel, what you need to do, what happened yesterday, what is happening now, and what you plan to do next. So in this lesson, I want you to relax and let your English become more natural little by little, not by force, not by pressure, but through calm and steady speaking practice that feels real and useful for daily life. Let's start with a simple idea, talking about your morning in a fluent way. Many learners can say small separate sentences like, I wake up, I drink tea, I go to work, and that is a good start. But when you want to sound more fluent at the B1 and B2 level, you need to connect your ideas more smoothly. For example, instead of saying only, I woke up at 7, I was tired, I made coffee. You can say something like this. I woke up at around 7 this morning, and to be honest, I still felt a little tired, so the first thing I did was make myself a cup of coffee. Can you feel the difference? The second version sounds more natural, more connected, more alive. It sounds like real speech, not like isolated practice sentences. Now I want you to try that kind of sentence flow in your own mind. Imagine your morning today. Do not try to create a perfect story. Just speak naturally. You can think like this. This morning, I woke up a little later than usual, and I had to get ready quickly because I did not want to waste times. Or, I woke up feeling quite fresh today, so I decided to start the morning slowly and enjoy a few quiet minutes before beginning my work. Notice how these sentences are not complicated, but they carry more feeling, more connections, and more fluency. This is one of the biggest steps between basic English and more confident English. Learning how to connect simple ideas in a calm and natural way. Here is a small speaking exercise for you. I want you to listen to this style and then repeat the feeling of it in your own words. I usually try to start my mornings in a calm way, but sometimes things do not go as planned, and I end up rushing more than I want to. That sentence is very useful because it sounds honest, natural, and flexible. Now you can change it to fit your own life. Maybe you say, I usually try to start my mornings early, but lately I have been waking up a bit late because I have been going to bed too late. Or maybe, I like peaceful mornings, but on busy days I sometimes feel stressed before the day has even really started. This is the kind of English that helps you speak like a real person, because you are not only saying what happens, you are also showing your feeling and your personal experience. Another important part of daily fluency is learning how to speak when things are normals, not only when something big happens. In real life, many conversations are about very ordinary things. What you ate, where you went, what you need to buy, why you were late, how your day is going, what you think about something simple. And this is wonderful news for you, because it means you do not need dramatic ideas to practice English. Your real daily life is already enough. For example, if someone asks you, how's your day going so far? You do not have to answer with only fine. You can say, it's going pretty well so far. I've been a little busy, but overall I'm in a good mood. Or, it's been a bit slow, honestly, but maybe that's not a bad thing, because I finally have time to catch up on a few things. Those answers are warm, natural, and full enough to continue a conversation. Let's stay with that idea for a moment, because many learners stop too quickly. They answer in one short sentence, and then the conversation dies. But if you want to sound more fluent, try to give your answer one more layer, one more detail, one more thought. If someone says, what did you do today? You can answer, I worked most of the day. And that is correct. But a more fluent answer could be, I worked most of the day, and after that I tried to rest a little because I felt mentally tired. Or, I didn't do anything very special today, but I did manage to finish a few things I had been postponing, so I felt quite productive in the end. Do you see what is happening here? You are extending your thought in a natural way. And that extension is what makes your speech sound more comfortable and mature. Now let's practice speaking about plans, because daily life conversations are full of future intentions. What are you doing latats? What are you doing tomorrows? What are you hoping to finish this week? Sometimes learners feel confused because they know grammar rules, but in real conversation, they hesitate, so let's make it easy. When you talk about plans, fluency often comes from soft and natural phrases like, I'm thinking of, I'm planning to, I might, I'll probably, I'm hoping to. Listen to how natural these sound. I'm planning to spend a little time reviewing my notes later tonight. I might go out in the evening if I finish my work early. I'm hoping to have a more productive day tomorrow because today felt a little scattered. I'll probably stay home this weekend and try to recharge. These are beautiful everyday patterns, not too formal, not too simple, just right for B1 and B2 speaking practice. I also want you to become more comfortable speaking about small problem songs. Because daily English is not only about happy and easy moments, sometimes you need to explain why something went wrong. Maybe you lost time, maybe your internet was slow, maybe you forgot some things, maybe you felt distracted. These are real situations, and they are perfect for fluency practice. For example, I meant to start earlier, but I got distracted and ended up wasting more time than I expected. Or, I wanted to finish everything this afternoon, but I had a few unexpected things to deal with. Or, I've been trying to be more organized lately, but some days still feel a little messy. Notice how these sentences help you sound humans. They do not sound robotic. They sound like something a real person would say in a real moment. Thoughts. And that is exactly where fluency grows. Let's do a gentle exercise together now. I want you to imagine that a friend asks, "Why do you look tired today?" You do not need a perfect answer. You just need a natural one. You might say, "I didn't sleep very well last night, so I've been feeling a little low on energy all day." Or, "I've had a lot on my mind recently, and I think it's starting to affect my sleep." Or even, "I'm okay, just a bit tired. It's been one of those days where everything feels a little heavier than usual." These answers are powerful because they are emotionally real. When you practice like this, you are not memorizing dead language. You are training yourself to express life. Now let's move into one of the most useful skills for speaking fluently: giving opinions in a soft and natural way. B1 and B2 speakers often need to share thoughts about habits, work, learning, food, travel, free time, or social situations. But many learners only say, "I like it," or "I don't like it." And again, that is a start. But you can sound more fluent by expanding a little. For example, "I like working in a quiet place because it helps me focus better." "I'm not a big fan of crowded places, especially when I already feel tired." "I think it's important to take breaks during the day. Otherwise, it becomes hard to stay focused." In my opinion, people learn faster when they feel relaxed and consistent rather than pressured. These kinds of sentences help you sound thoughtful, balanced, and confident. I want you to notice something else too. Fluent speakers often use softeners. These are small phrases that make your speech sound smoother and more natural. Phrases like, "To be honest," "I think," "in my opinion," "for me," "personally," "it seems like," "I guess." As far as I can tell, these expressions are extremely useful, not because they are fancy, but because they help your ideas flow gently. Instead of saying, "This is bad," you might say, "To be honest, I don't think this is the best option," instead of saying, "I don't like mornings." You might say, "Personally, I'm not really a morning person." Can you hear how much softer and more natural that sounds? This is the kind of detail that gives your English a more real and more comfortable rhythm. Now let's practice a short daily life speaking flow. Imagine you are talking about your week so far. Listen to this model carefully. This week has been a little mixed, to be honest. I've had a few productive moments, but I've also felt tired more often than usual. I'm trying not to be too hard on myself, though, because I know I'm still making progress. This is an excellent fluency model. It has feeling, reflection, balance, and natural rhythm. Now maybe your version sounds like this: "My week has been quite busy so far, but I'm glad I've managed to stay on top of most things. I still have a lot to do, but I feel a bit more in control now than I did a few days ago." Or maybe, "It hasn't been the easiest week, honestly, but I'm doing my best to stay positive and keep moving forward. All of these are natural and useful. One thing that really helps B1 and B2 learners is learning how to keep speaking even when they are not sure of the exact word. This is a huge part of real fluency, because fluent speakers do not always use perfect words either. Sometimes they explain around the word, they describe it, they simplify it, and they keep going. For example, maybe you forget the word appointment. You can still say, I have to go meet someone at a specific time. Maybe you forget the word charger. You can say, the thing I use to give power to my phone. This skill is so important because it teaches your brain not to stop. When you stop every time you forget one word, your fluency breaks. But when you keep moving and explain in another way, your confidence becomes stronger. So from now on, give yourself permission to keep speaking, even imperfectly, especially imperfectly, because that is where growth happens. Before we finish this first part, I want to leave you with a longer speaking practice paragraph that you can repeat aloud slowly. These days, I'm trying to become more consistent with my English practice because I know that small daily effort can make a big difference over time. I don't expect myself to be perfect, but I do want to feel more comfortable expressing my thoughts in a natural way. Sometimes I still hesitate or lose my words, but I'm learning not to panic. Instead, I try to stay calm, continue speaking, and trust that fluency grows with practice. This paragraph is full of useful rhythm and useful meaning. It is not only good English, it is also a good mindset. And now I want you to create your own version in your heart or on paper. Maybe you say, right now, I'm trying to improve the way I speak English in daily life because I want to sound more natural and less afraid of making mistakes. I know this will take time, but I also know that every little practice session helps me move forward. That is beautiful practice, honest practice, strong practice, and this is exactly how we are going to continue together. Slowly, clearly, and step by step. Let's continue by practicing something that matters so much in everyday English. Learning how to speak naturally when you are describing your day in more detail. Because in real conversations, people often ask simple questions, but they expect more than a one-line answer. Someone may ask you how your morning was, what you have been doing lately, whether you have been busy, or how things are going en generalance. And this is where your fluency begins to show, not in difficult grammars, but in the way you carry a simple idea forward with calm and natural language. For example, if someone asks you, have you been busy lately? You can say yes, very busy. And that is correct. But a more natural B1 or B2 answer could be, yes, I've actually been quite busy lately, especially during the evenings, so I haven't had as much time to relax as I would like. Or maybe, it's been a busy period, but in a good way. I've had a lot to do, but I also feel like I'm making progress. These responses sound more like real life, more personal, more connected, and that is exactly what we want. A very useful way to build fluency is to stop thinking of English as single sentences and start thinking of it as thought movement. A thought begins, then it grows, then it connects to another thought, and then maybe it turns slightly and adds emotion or explanations. This is how real speaking works. Imagine you want to talk about your afternoons. A very simple version might be, I had lunch, then I worked, then I rested. But if you let the thought move more naturally, it becomes something like this. After lunch, I went back to work for a few hours, but by the end of the afternoon, I could feel my energy dropping, so I decided to take a short break and clear my mind a little. Now it sounds more human. It sounds like spoken English, and it gives the listener something to connect with. This is one of the best habits you can build. Always try to add one more natural idea, one more reason, one more feelings, one more details. Now I want you to think about how often daily conversations include emotions. Not big dramatic emotions all the times, but small everyday feelings. Tired, relieved, annoyed, grateful, distracted, calm, motivated, disappointed, hopeful. These feelings appear in ordinary speech all the time, and if you learn to express them naturally, your English will feel much more alive. For example, I felt a bit stressed this morning because I had too many things in my head at once. I was actually quite relieved when I finished everything I needed to do. I've been feeling a little unmotivated recently, so I'm trying to get back into a better routine. I was in a good mood today, and I think that helped me stay focused. Do you see how natural this is? When you include feeling, your English stops sounding like a textbook and starts sounding like you. Let's practice with a real-life daily situations. Imagine someone asks you, "How was your weekend?" Many learners answer with something very short like, "It was good." And again, that is not wrong. But if you want to grow your fluency, you can turn that answer into a fuller and warmer response. "It was pretty good, actually. I didn't do anything too exciting, but I had time to rest, and that was exactly what I needed." Or, "My weekend was nice overall, although I wish I had used my time a little better. I relaxed a lot, which was good, but I also kept postponing a few important things." Or maybe, "It was a bit mixed, to be honest. One part of it was relaxing, but I also felt slightly worried about the week ahead." These are excellent examples because they sound thoughtful and real. They show balance, they show honesty, and they help you sound more fluent without needing complicated vocabulary. Another area that helps a lot at the B1 and B2 level is learning how to speak when you are explaining habits. Habits are everywhere in conversations: sleep habits, study habits, eating habits, spending habits, work habits. And when people talk about habits, they often use language that repeats again and again. Phrases like, "I tend to," "I usually," "I try to," "I've been trying to," "I have a habit of," "I used to," "these days," "lately." Listen to how natural these sound. "I tend to work better in the evening when everything is quieter." "I usually try to prepare a few things the night before so my mornings feel easier." "I've been trying to spend less time on my phone, especially before bed." "I have a habit of overthinking small things, and I'm still working on that." "I used to be much less organized, but these days I'm trying to plan things a bit better." All of these are powerful daily life patterns. And if you practice them often, they will begin to come out more naturally when you speak. Now let's slow down and do a practice paragraph together. Imagine you are talking about a habit you are trying to improve. You could say something like this: "Lately, I've been trying to create a better routine for myself because I've noticed that my days feel much better when I start them in a calm and organized way. I'm not perfect at it yet, of course, but I do feel that I'm becoming more aware of the habits that help me and the habits that make things harder." This is very natural daily English. It sounds reflective, it sounds mature, and it gives you many useful sentence patterns. If you want, you can change it and make it personal. "Recently, I've been trying to sleep earlier because I've realized that I feel more focused and more positive when I get enough rest." Or these days, I'm trying to be more consistent with my study time because I know that regular practice helps me more than long and stressful study sessions. When you practice like this, you are not only learning English, you are also learning how to talk about your real life in a more expressive way. Let's move into another important speaking skill: learning how to react naturally during conversations. Because fluency is not only about long answers, it is also about short natural reactions. When someone tells you something, how do you show interest? Budtant. Surprise, sympathy, agreement, mild disagreement, This is where many learners feel stiff. But the good news is that natural reactions can be practiced. For example, if someone says, "I've been so tired lately," a natural response might be, "Yeah, I know that feeling." Or, "That sounds exhausting, honestly." Or, "I'm not surprised you've had a lot going on." If someone says, "I finally finished that task I'd been avoiding," you can respond with, "That must feel really satisfying." Or, "Good for you. It's such a relief when something like that is finally done." These kinds of short responses make your English sound much more alive and conversational. And when you want to agree with someone in a natural way, you do not always need to say, "Only, I agree." You can say, "Exactly, that's true. I know what you mean. I feel the same way. That happens to me too. I've noticed that as well. That's such a good point." And when you want to disagree gently, you do not have to sound too strong. You can say, "I'm not sure I completely agree. I see your point, but I think it depends." That may be true in some cases, but not always. These are excellent phrases for B1 and B2 learners because they help you stay engaged in conversation without sounding too direct or too flat. Now imagine this small conversation in daily life. Someone says, "I think weekends go by too quickly." And you answer, "Honestly, I feel the same way. It always feels like there's never enough time to rest properly before the new week begins." Or maybe someone says, "I prefer staying home rather than going out when I'm tired." And you answer, "Yes, that makes sense." Sometimes staying home is exactly what you need to recharge. Do you notice how fluency is often built with these small bridges? One sentence connects warmly to another. That is how conversations begin to flow. Another skill we should practice is speaking about decisions. Because every day we make small decisions: what to eat, whether to go out, when to rest, whether to buy something, how to spend time, what to focus on first. And if you can speak about decisions naturally, your daily English becomes much stronger. Here are some very natural sentence patterns. I decided to, I ended up, I was going to, but in the end, I thought about it, and I figured it would be better to. I wasn't sure at first, but, for example, I was going to go out in the evening, but in the end, I decided to stay home because I was more tired than I expected. I thought about starting earlier, but I ended up putting it off until later in the day. I wasn't sure at first, but then I figured it would be better to finish one thing properly instead of starting 3 things at once. These are wonderful daily life structures because they reflect real thinking, not just actions, and that makes your English sound more human. Let's practice that with a fuller paragraph. This afternoon, I was going to do something productive right away, but I noticed that I was feeling mentally tired, so I decided to rest for a while first. At first, I felt a little guilty about that, but in the end I realized it was probably the better choice because I was able to focus much more clearly afterward. Can you hear how natural that sounds? It has action, emotion, explanation, and self-reflection. This kind of speaking is excellent for reaching a more fluent B1 and B2 style because it is not about using difficult words. It is about expressing thought in a smooth and balanced way. Now, I want to help you with something many learners need: learning how to tell a small story from daily life. Not a dramatic story, just a normal little story. Maybe something that happened at work, while shopping, during a phone call, while traveling, or while trying to finish something at home. Daily storytelling is a big part of natural speaking, and it usually follows a simple path. First, you set the situations. Then something happens. Then you react. Then you explain the result or feeling, for examples. Yesterday, I went to buy a few things, and I thought it would only take 10 minutes. But the place was much busier than I expected. By the time I got back, I felt more tired than I should have from such a small task. So I just sat down for a while and did nothing. That is a beautiful little daily life story. Very normal, very useful, very real. And you can build hundreds of these from your own life. Try another example. This morning, I planned to start working early, but I got distracted by a message on my phone and lost more time than I realized. It wasn't a huge problem, but it did remind me that I need to be a bit more careful about how I begin my day. This sounds natural because it includes not just what happened, but also the small lesson or thought that followed. This kind of reflection is very common in fluent everyday English. People do not only report events, they also interpret them, tant. Now let's practice speaking about personal growth, because daily conversations often include small reflections about change. Maybe you are getting better at some things. Maybe you are trying to become more patient. Maybe you are learning to manage your time. Maybe you are becoming more confident. These topics are excellent for B1 and B2 speaking practice because they allow you to use meaningful English. For example, I think I'm getting a little better at managing my time, although I still have days when everything feels disorganized. I've become more aware of how important rest is, especially when I want to stay focused and positive. I'm trying to be less critical of myself when things don't go perfectly. I feel like I'm slowly becoming more comfortable speaking English, even though I still make mistakes. These sentences are rich with useful meaning, and they are very close to real life. Before we end this part, I want to give you a longer paragraph to repeat and absorb slowly. One thing I've been realizing recently is that daily life gives me many chances to practice English in a natural way. I don't need every moment to be exciting or special. Even small experiences can become useful speaking practice if I take the time to describe them clearly and honestly. Some days feel easier than others, of course. But I'm learning that fluency grows when I keep going, stay patient, and speak from real life instead of trying to sound perfect all the time. This paragraph carries a very important message. Daily life is not too simple for English practice. Daily life is exactly where real English lives. So now, as we continue together, I want you to remember this. Your fluency does not grow because you try to impress. It grows because you practice expressing real things. What you did, what you noticed, what you felt, what you changed your mind about, what you are trying to improve, and how your day is really going. When you speak from life, even in simple language, your English becomes stronger, warmer, and more natural. And that is the direction we are moving in together. Step by step, sentence by sentence, with patience, with honesties, and with real human rhythm. Now I want to take you deeper into something that can completely change the way you speak English in daily life. Learning how to continue a conversation in a natural and comfortable way. Because many learners can answer a question. They feel stuck. They do not know how to keep going. They do not know how to add something extra. Or they worry that their English will sound strange if they speak for too long. But the truth is, real fluency is often not about having smarter ideas. It is about learning how to stay with the conversation a little longer. How to add one more thought, one more feeling, one more small detail that keeps the interaction alive. For example, if someone asks you, "Did you have a busy day?" you can answer, "Yes, I did." But if you want the conversation to flow more naturally, you can continue. "Yes, I did actually. It wasn't stressful the whole time, but I definitely had a lot on my mind, and by the evening I could really feel it." Now your speech sounds fuller, more relaxed, and more real. This is a very important habit for B1 and B2 learners. Instead of stopping at the first correct sentence, try to let the answer breathe a little, let it grow. Maybe you explain why. Maybe you mention how you felt. Maybe you compare it to another day. Maybe you add what happened next. All of this creates natural speaking rhythm. Imagine someone asks you, "What did you do after work?" You could say, "I went home," and that is fine. But you could also say, "I went home pretty much right away because I was too tired to do anything else. I thought about going out for a bit, but honestly, I just wanted some quiet time." This is the kind of answer people really give in life. And when you practice this kind of response again and again, it becomes easier for your brain to keep speaking without panic. Let's talk about another daily life skill that helps fluency so much: describing what is happening around you or what has been happening recently. This is very useful because real conversations are often not about big important topics. They are about what has been going on lately. Maybe work has been busy. Maybe the weather has changed. Maybe your routine feels different. Maybe your sleep has been worse. Maybe you have been trying to improve some things. These are all natural conversation topics. And they often use patterns like lately, recently, these days, for the past few days. I've noticed that I've been feeling like, it seems like, listen to how natural these sound. Lately, I've been feeling more tired in the afternoons, so I've been trying to take better care of my routine. Recently, I've noticed that I focus much better when I start my day without checking my phone. These days, I feel like time passes very quickly, especially when I have too many small things to deal with. This kind of language is simple, but it feels thoughtful and mature. And that is exactly what helps your English sound stronger at the B1 and B2 level. Now, let's practice describing change, because daily life is full of small changes. Some are good, some are difficult, some are temporary, and some become long-term habits. If you can talk about change naturally, you become much more flexible in conversations. For example, I used to stay up very late, but recently I've been trying to sleep earlier. At one point I felt very unmotivated, but little by little I started getting back into a better rhythm. Things have been a bit more manageable this week than they were last week. I'm still working on it, but I do feel like I'm improving slowly. Can you hear the softness in these sentences? They do not sound too dramatic. They sound balanced, honest, and human. That balance is so important because daily fluency often sounds calm rather than extreme. Let's imagine a normal conversation between friends. One person says, "You seem more relaxed these days." And the other person replies, "Yeah, I think so too. Actually, I've been trying to slow down a little and stop putting so much pressure on myself all the time." Or maybe someone says, "You look tired today." And the answer is, "I am a little tired, to be honest. I haven't been sleeping very well lately, and I think it's starting to catch up with me." These answers are not hard to understand, but they feel very natural, and that is the beauty of daily English. You do not need complicated structures all the time. You need useful patterns that help you express real thoughts clearly. Another important area of fluency is learning how to explain reasons in a natural way. Because in conversation, we are always explaining why we were late, why we changed our mind, why we feel tired, why we prefer one thing over another, why we have not finished something yet. And when learners cannot explain reasons smoothly, their speech begins to feel limited. So let's practice some common patterns. Because it's important, of course. But natural English also uses phrases like since the reason is, that's why, which is why, partly because, mainly because, the main thing is, it's mostly because. For example, I stayed home this evening mainly because I needed some quiet time. I haven't been as productive as I wanted, partly because I've been feeling mentally tired. I decided to take a break, which is why I'm feeling a bit better now. The main thing is that I've had a lot to think about recently. These structures make your speech more flexible and much more natural. Now I want you to think about how often we talk about preferences in everyday life. What kind of environment we like, what time of day works best for us. Whether we enjoy being around people or being alone sometimes, whether we prefer planning or acting spontaneously. All of this is beautiful fluency practice because preferences allow you to speak in a personal and meaningful way. For example, I usually prefer doing important tasks in the morning because that's when my mind feels the clearest. I like quiet evenings more than busy ones, especially after a long day. I don't mind going out, but only when I have enough energy for it. I'd rather finish one thing properly than rush through several things at once. When you talk about preferences like this, you are doing something very powerful. You are not memorizing random English. You are building English around your own life. And that makes it easier to remember, easier to use, and easier to say naturally. Let's take a small daily life topic and develop it more fully. Imagine you are talking about how you spend your free time. Many learners say very simple things like, I watch videos, I listen to music, I rest, and that is not wrong. But you can make it more natural by adding context and feeling. When I have some free time, I usually try to do something that helps me relax mentally, even if it's something very simple, like listening to music or just sitting quietly for a while, or I don't always use my free time in the best way, to be honest. Sometimes I plan to do something useful, but then I end up just scrolling on my phone longer than I meant to. Or, these days, I've been trying to use my free time more carefully because I've realized how quickly it disappears if I'm not paying attention. These answers sound much more like natural spoken English. And they also give you a chance to show your thinking, not just your actions. Now let's focus on another skill that matters a lot in fluent speaking. Comparing things. In daily conversation, we compare all the time. Today with yesterday, this week with last week. Working from home with working outside. Being alone with being in a group. Mornings with evenings. One habit with another habit. And comparison gives your English more depth. For example, this week has been much more manageable than last week. I feel more focused in the morning than I do late at night. Talking to one person feels easier for me than speaking in front of a group. This routine is not perfect, but it's definitely better than the one I had before. These kinds of comparisons are extremely useful because they reflect how people really think and talk. We often understand life by comparing one thing with another. Let's build that into a longer speaking paragraph. Lately, I've been trying to create a healthier daily routine, and even though I'm still figuring things out, I can already feel that this version of my day is better than the one I had before. I'm sleeping a little better. I feel slightly less rushed. And overall, I think my mind feels calmer when I know what I'm supposed to focus on. This is such a useful paragraph to practice because it includes time, effort, comparison, feeling, and reflection. These are all key parts of natural B1 and B2 speaking. Now, I want to help you with one of the most human parts of conversation, uncertainty. Because in real life, we are not always sure. We are not always fully decided. Sometimes we are thinking, guessing, hoping, considering. And when you learn to express uncertainty naturally, your English becomes much more realistic. Phrases like, I'm not completely sure. I haven't decided yet. I'm still thinking about it. It depends. I might. There's a chance. I'm not certain, but we'll see. Are all very common in everyday speech. For example, I'm not completely sure what I'll do this weekend yet. It really depends on how tired I feel. I haven't decided yet, but I might spend some time catching up on a few things I've been avoiding. There's a chance I'll go out later. but for now I just want to stay home and rest. This kind of language helps you sound much more natural because real life is full of incomplete decisions. Let's move gently into a practical speaking exercise. Imagine someone asks you, "How have things been lately?" I want you to notice how many different natural answers are possible. You could say, "Things have been okay overall, a little busy, a little tiring, but not too bad." Or, "Honestly, it's been a mixed period. Some days have felt quite productive, and other days have felt harder than I expected." Or, "Things have been improving slowly. I still have a lot to work on, but I do feel like I'm getting back on track." These are excellent responses because they sound like genuine life. They are not too perfect, not too dramatic, just thoughtful and real. Here is another exercise. Imagine someone asks you, "What kind of days do you enjoy the most?" You could answer, "I usually enjoy quiet, balanced days where I can get a few important things done without feeling rushed." Or, "The best kind of day for me is one where I feel productive, but still have enough time to relax and think." Or even, "I like days that feel simple and clear, not too crowded, not too stressful, just calm enough for me to focus and breathe properly." Can you feel how personal these responses are? This is exactly what makes speaking practice more powerful. When you connect it to your real preferences and experiences, it becomes easier to remember and easier to say with feeling. Another thing I want you to practice is speaking more gently about mistakes and imperfections, because daily life is not smooth all the time, and real English often includes small, honest admissions. Phrases like, "I should have," "I meant to," "I didn't manage to," "I wish I had," "I got a bit distracted," "I wasn't as focused as I wanted to be," are very common. For example, "I meant to start earlier, but I got distracted and lost track of time." "I didn't manage to finish everything today, but at least I made some progress." "I wish I had used my time better this morning, although I'm trying not to dwell on it too much." This kind of honest language makes you sound human, and it helps you discuss daily life in a realistic way. Before we close this part, I want to leave you with a reflection paragraph that brings many of today's ideas together. The more I practice speaking about real daily life, the more I realize that fluency is not about sounding perfect. It's about being able to express what is happening, what I'm noticing, what I'm feeling, and what I'm trying to improve. Some days I speak more easily than others, but even when I hesitate, I know that every honest sentence helps me grow. Little by little, I'm learning to trust my own voice more. This paragraph is important because it carries the right message for fluency: calm efforts, real language, and patience. So as we continue, I want you to remember something simple but powerful. You do not need to perform. You do not need to sound impressive all the time. You only need to keep describing life with honesty. What your days feel like, what has been changing, what you prefer, what you are unsure about, what you are learning from your own routines. And when you speak this way, with natural pauses, with real thoughts, and with steady practice, your English begins to feel less like a school subject and more like a living part of you. And that is where true daily fluencies starts to grow. Now let's keep moving forward and spend some time with one of the most useful parts of real fluency: speaking naturally with other people in simple daily conversations. Because sometimes learners feel comfortable when they talk alone, but the moment another person joins the conversation, everything feels different. Suddenly, there is pressure. Suddenly, there is less time to think. Suddenly, you feel like you need the perfect sentence right away. But real conversation does not work like that. Real conversation is full of small pauses, short reactions, unfinished thoughts, quick changes of directions, and simple human connections. So in this part, I want to help you feel more prepared for those ordinary moments, the kinds of moments that happen every day. When someone asks a question, when you need to respond politely, when you want to keep a conversation going, or when you just want to sound more relaxed and natural in front of another person. Let's begin with small talk, because many people think small talk is unimportant. But actually, small talk is one of the biggest parts of daily communications. It happens before meetings, during phone calls, when you see a neighbor, when you meet a classmate, when you talk to someone at work, when you wait somewhere, and even when you do not know someone very well. Small talk is not deep, but it helps conversations feel warmer and easier. And for English learners, it is wonderful practice because the topics are often simple. How your day is going, whether you have been busy, how the week has been, whether you are tired, what you have been up to. For example, if someone says, "How's your day going?" you do not have to answer in a stiff way. You can say, "It's going pretty well so far. I've had a few things to take care of, but nothing too stressful." Or, "It's been a bit busy, to be honest, but I can't complain." Or even, "So far, so good. I'm a little tired today, but otherwise everything's fine." These answers sound natural because they are simple, balanced, and open enough to continue the conversations. Now let's imagine someone says, "You look busy." This is a very common kind of daily comment, and you can respond in different natural ways depending on your mood. You might say, "Yeah, it's been one of those days. I've had a lot to do, and I'm still not done yet." Or, "A little, yes, but I'm trying to stay organized and take it one thing at a time." Or maybe, "I probably do look busy. I've been jumping from one task to another all day." These sentences are useful because they do more than answer. They show your state of mind. And that is what makes speech feel human. You are not just giving informations. You are sharing a moment. A very important speaking skill at the B1 and B2 level is learning how to ask follow-up question naturalization. Because fluency is not only about talking about yourself, it is also about helping the conversation move forward. When someone tells you something, you can respond and then ask something back. And that small habit makes you sound much more engaged and comfortable. For example, if someone says, "I had a really busy weekend," you can say, "Really? What were you busy with?" Or, "That sounds tiring. Did you at least get some time to rest?" If someone says, "I'm trying to change my routine lately," you can ask, "Oh, really? What kind of changes are you trying to make?" Or, "Has it been helping so far?" These are not difficult questions, but they are exactly the kinds of things people say in real conversations. And if you practice them often, they start to come naturally. Let's stay with that for a moment, because many learners wait for the perfect question. But real conversations often grow from very ordinary follow-up questions. How was that? What happened? How did that go? Did it work out? What do you mean? How did you feel about it? Was it difficult? Have you done that before? These are excellent tools because when you do not know what to say next, a simple follow-up question can keep the conversation alive. And when the other person answers, you get more language, knots, more rhythm, more opportunity to respond again. So fluency becomes a shared process, not something you carry alone. Now I want to move into another daily life area that helps speaking a lot. Talking on the phone or sending voice messages. Because when you cannot see the other person's face, your English can feel different. Sometimes a little harder, sometimes a little more awkward. So it helps to practice natural phone-style phrases, for example. "Hi, I just wanted to check something with you." "Sorry, I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." "I just wanted to let you know that I might be a little late. I was wondering if you had a minute. Can I call you back in a little while?" "Sorry, The connection is a bit unclear. I didn't catch that. Could you say it again? These phrases are so useful in daily life because phone communication is rarely perfect. Sometimes there is noise. Sometimes the timing is bad. Sometimes you miss a word. And learning how to handle that calmly makes you much more confident. Donits. Imagine you are calling someone and you need to explain a small change of plan. You could say something like this. Hi, I just wanted to let you know that I may be a little late. I thought I would finish everything on time, but something unexpected came up, so I'm still trying to sort it out. Or maybe, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I'll be able to make it today after all. I was hoping things would work out, but it's been a bit more complicated than I expected. These are very natural kinds of phone sentences, and they are important because daily fluency is often about handling normal situations politely and clearly, not about using big words. Let's talk now about asking for help, because this is something everyone needs to do. Sometimes, maybe you need help understanding something. Maybe you need directions. Maybe you need someone to repeat a point. Maybe you need more time. And if you know how to ask for help, naturally, your English becomes much more practical. For example, could you help me with this for a moment? Do you mind explaining that again? I'm not completely sure I understood. Would you mind repeating that a little more slowly? Can you give me a hand with something? I just need a bit of clarification. These phrases are useful because they sound polite, calm, and natural, and they also reduce pressure. You do not need to pretend you understood everything. Strong communication often means asking clearly when you need support. Here is a gentle speaking model for that. Sorry, I'm not completely sure I understood what you meant just now. Could you explain it one more time in a slightly different way? That is a beautiful sentence to practice because it is polite, honest, and confident at the same time. You are not hiding your confusions, but you are also not panicking. You are simply keeping the communication open, and that is a very important part of fluency. Being able to keep going even when something is unclear. Now let's explore how to speak naturally in simple service situations, like shops, restaurants, transport, appointments, or asking for basic information. Because these are classic daily life moments where many learners want more confidence. And the good thing is that the language is usually very repeated and very practical. You might say, "Hi, I'm just looking around for now. Could I ask you something? Do you have this in another size? Is there any chance this is available somewhere else? I'm here for my appointment. Could you tell me where I'm supposed to go? I think there may have been a mistake. Would it be possible to change this? I'm not in a hurry, but I just wanted to check." These phrases are so useful because they help you stay polite while also speaking with purpose. And when you feel prepared for these common situations, your general fluency becomes stronger too. Let's imagine a small real-life situations. Maybe you arrive somewhere and need to explain yourself. You could say, "Hi, I'm here a little earlier than expected. I just wanted to check whether I should wait here or come back in a few minutes. Or perhaps, excuse me, I think I may have misunderstood the time. I thought it was later, so I just wanted to make sure I'm in the right place." These are excellent daily life sentences because they sound very natural. They are polite, and they give clear information without sounding too formal. Another area we should practice is clarifying misunderstandings, because in real conversation, misunderstandings happen all the time, even between native speakers. So you should never see them as failures. They are just part of communication. What matters is knowing how to respond calmly. For example, "Oh, I think I explained that badly. What I meant was, sorry, let me say that again more clearly." "No, not exactly. What I was trying to say is, I may have given the wrong impression. That's not quite what I meant. Maybe I didn't explain it very well. These phrases are extremely valuable because they give you a second chance without breaking the flow of conversations. Instead of freezing when there is confusion, you learn how to repair the moment naturally, and that is a major part of real fluency. Now let's practice a short daily conversation flow. Imagine someone asks, "Have you been keeping busy lately?" You answer, "Yeah, more than usual, actually. I've had a lot of small things to deal with, so even when I'm not doing anything dramatic, I still feel quite occupied." Then the other person says, "What kind of things?" And you continue. Mostly routine stuff, to be honest. A few responsibilities, a few unfinished tasks, and just the usual things that seem small until they all appear at once. This is such natural English. It moves softly. It reflects real thought. And it feels like something people genuinely say. Let's do another one. Someone says, "You sound tired." And you reply, "I probably do. It's been a long day, and I don't think I gave myself enough time to slow down in the middle of it." Then they say, "Are you okay?" And you answer, "Yeah, I'm okay. I just need a little rest, that's all. I think I've been trying to do too much without really noticing it." Again, this is not complicated English, but it is rich, connected, and human. And that is what we are aiming for in these lessons. I also want to help you with speaking more naturally when you need time to think. That's because many learners feel pressure to answer immediately. But fluent speakers often buy themselves a little time in a very natural way. They say things like, "Let me think for a second. That's a good question. I've never really thought about that before. It depends, actually. To be honest, I suppose, now that you mention it, off the top of my head, these small expressions are powerful because they create breathing space, and they make your speech sound more natural rather than less fluent. For example, that's a good question. Actually, I think I'd say I prefer quiet places because I focus better there. Or, it depends, really. On some days I like being around people, but on other days, I just want some space." This is real spoken English. A little pause, a little thought, and then a real answer. Before we finish this part, I want to leave you with one longer practice paragraph that brings many of these daily conversation skills together. The more I practice everyday English, the more I understand that good communication is not about having perfect sentences all the time. It's about knowing how to respond, how to ask a simple follow-up question, how to explain something clearly, and how to stay calm when I need a moment to think. Some conversations feel easier than others, of course, but I'm learning that even small daily interactions can help me become a more natural and confident speaker. That paragraph carries such an important truth. Fluency is built in ordinary human moments: a question, a reply, a pause, a clarification, a kind reaction, a simple explanation. And when you practice these moments again and again, your English starts to feel more comfortable in real life. Not only in study time, but in actual conversations, where it truly matters. Now let's continue by working on something that becomes more and more important as your English grows stronger. Learning how to speak naturally when you are explaining your thoughts in a more complete way. Because at the B1 and B2 level, you are usually not only saying what happens, you are also starting to explain what you think about it, why it matters, how it affects you, and what you have learned from it. This is where your English begins to sound more mature. Not because it becomes more difficult, but because it becomes more reflective, more connected, and more personal. For example, if someone asks you, "How do you feel about working under pressure?" You do not have to give a short answer like, "I don't like it." You can say something much more natural like, "To be honest, I can handle pressure for a short time, But if it continues for too long, I start to feel mentally drained and less focused. Or I don't mind a little pressure because it can help me stay alert, but too much of it usually has the opposite effect on me. These kinds of answers are excellent because they sound real, balanced, and thoughtful. This is something I really want you to notice. Strong daily fluency often comes from balance, not from extreme language. Real people very often say things like, "It depends." In some ways, yes. On the one hand, at the same time, I can see both sides. Generally speaking, for the most part, these expressions help you show nuance. And nuance is a big part of natural B1 and B2 speaking. Imagine someone asks you, "Do you enjoy busy days?" Instead of answering only yes or no, you can say, "It depends on the kind of busy day, honestly, Was. If I'm busy with meaningful things, I usually feel good about it. But if I'm just rushing from one small task to another, I can start to feel overwhelmed." That answer sounds much more alive. It sounds like the speech of a real person thinking in real time. Let's talk now about expressing thoughts more clearly when you are discussing daily life problems. Because this is one of the most practical things you can learn. Maybe you are talking about time management, stress, distractions, communication, motivation, tiredness, organization, or balancing work and rest. These are all daily life topics that come up again and again in real conversations. And when you can speak about them naturally, your confidence grows very quickly. For example, one thing I've been struggling with lately is staying focused for long periods of time. I can usually start well, but after a while my mind begins to wander, especially if I've already had a busy day. Or I think one of my biggest problems is that I sometimes make simple tasks feel bigger in my mind than they really are. Or I've realized that I often lose energy not because I'm doing too much, but because I keep thinking about too many things at once. These sentences are strong daily life English, thoughtful, honest, and very useful for real speaking practice. Now I want to move into a skill that helps many learners sound more fluent almost immediately. Learning how to give examples naturally. Because when you explain an idea, a natural example makes your speech much clearer and much easier to follow. In conversation, we often use phrases like, for example, for instance, like, such as, what I mean is, for me, in my case. And these small phrases help your ideas feel more natural. For example, I try to create a better routine for myself. For example, I've started preparing a few things earlier so my mornings feel less stressful. I get distracted very easily sometimes. Like when I only mean to check one thing on my phone and then suddenly 15 minutes disappear. I prefer calm evenings. What I mean is, I like the kind of evening where I don't feel rushed or surrounded by too much noise. These examples do something very important. They make your speaking easier to understand, and they help you continue talking without getting stuck. Let's practice that more deeply. Imagine you want to say that rest is important for you. You could say, "Rest matters to me because I notice a big difference in my mood and focus when I give myself enough time to slow down." And then you can make it more natural by adding an example. For example, if I keep pushing myself without a break, even simple tasks start to feel heavier than they should. Or maybe, in my case, even 10 quiet minutes can help me feel more clear-headed again. That is such a useful speaking pattern. Make a point, then give a simple real-life example, and your fluency becomes stronger right away. Another very important skill for daily English is learning how to describe people in a natural and respectful way. Because in real conversation, we often talk about other people, friends, family members, coworkers, classmates, neighbors, or even strangers we met briefly, and the key here is not using complicated adjectives. The key is describing people in a way that feels natural and human. For example, she's the kind of person who stays calm even when things get stressful. He can be a little quiet at first, but once he feels comfortable, he becomes much more talkative. I like being around people who have a steady kind of energy because it helps me feel more relaxed too. Some people seem certainly organized, while others, like me, have to work a bit harder at it. These sentences are extremely useful because they allow you to describe personality and behavior with warmth and realism. Now let's apply that to a speaking exercise. Imagine someone asks you, "What kind of people do you enjoy talking to?" You could say, "I usually enjoy talking to people who make conversations feel easy, not necessarily people who talk a lot, but people who listen well and respond in a genuine way." Or, "I feel most comfortable around people who are calm and open-minded because I don't feel like I have to be perfect around them." Or maybe, "I like talking to people who have a good sense of balance, people who can be serious when needed, but also know how to keep things light." These responses are strong because they are personal, natural, and clear. They help you speak beyond the most basic level without becoming too formal. Let's continue with another area that matters a lot in real conversations. Talking about past experiences in a relaxed and fluent way. Not dramatic life stories, just everyday memories and normal experiences. Maybe something you tried, something you learned, a mistake you made, a place you went, or a time when something went better or worse than expected. The goal here is not perfect storytelling. The goal is learning how to speak about the past with flow. For example, "There was a time when I used to leave everything until the last minute, and even though I somehow managed most of the time, it made my days feel much more stressful than they needed to be." Or, "I remember one day when I thought I had planned everything properly, but then one small change affected the whole day and reminded me how important flexibility is." Or, "A while ago, I started paying more attention to how I used my evenings, and that small change actually improved a lot of other parts of my routine too." Do you notice something here? These sentences do not only report the past, they connect the past to a thought or lesson, and that makes them sound much richer. This is a great habit to build. That's when you speak about experience, try to include a small reflection. For example, "I used to think being busy always meant being productive, but over time I realized that isn't necessarily true. At one point I kept saying yes to everything, and eventually I understood that doing that was making me more tired than helpful. I used to worry too much about speaking perfectly, but then I noticed that people usually care more about whether they can understand you than whether every sentence is flawless." This kind of speaking feels very human because people naturally connect experience to learning. And if you practice that regularly, your English becomes much more expressive. Now I want to spend some time on another very useful topic. Talking about goals in a natural way. Because daily fluency is not only about what is happening now, we also often speak about what we want to improve, what we hope to change, what we are working toward, or what we are trying to become better at. And when you talk about goals, it helps to sound realistic rather than overly dramatic. Phrases like, "I'm working on, I've been focusing on. One thing I want to improve is, my goal at the moment is, little by little, over time," are extremely useful. For example, "One thing I'm trying to improve at the moment is how I manage my time during the day. I'd like to become more consistent, especially when it comes to finishing small tasks before they build up. I've been focusing on speaking more naturally rather than trying to make every sentence sound perfect. My goal right now is not to do everything perfectly. It's to create habits that feel more stable over time." This is strong, grounded English, and it sounds very natural in real conversations. Let's turn that into a practice paragraph. These days, one thing I'm really trying to work on is staying more present while I'm doing something. I've noticed that when my attention is divided, even simple tasks start to take more energy than they should. So my goal is to become more focused, not in a harsh way, but in a calmer and more steady way that feels realistic for daily life. This is a beautiful paragraph to practice aloud because it sounds thoughtful, personal, and very natural for the B1 and B2 level. Now let's move into speaking about agreement and disagreement in a more developed way. Because as your English grows, you will often need to react to ideas. Maybe someone gives an opinion about daily routines, productivity, free time, social life, health, or learning, and you want to respond to the sound in a way that sounds natural and balanced. Here are some useful ways to agree more fully. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. That makes a lot of sense to me. I've had the same experience. I think there's a lot of truth in that. I completely get what you mean. And here are some useful ways to disagree gently, to see. I can see why you'd say that, but I think it depends on the person. That may be true for some people, but I'm not sure it works that way for everyone. I understand the point, although my experience has been a little different. I wouldn't say I fully agree, but I do understand where that idea comes from. These phrases are excellent because they help you stay respectful while still expressing your real thoughts. And that is very important in fluent daily conversations. Imagine someone says, being busy all the time is a sign that you're doing well. You could respond, I understand why some people think that, but personally, I don't believe being busy always means you're doing well. Sometimes it just means you haven't had enough time to slow down and think clearly. Or if someone says, it's better to do everything quickly and move on, you might say, I can see the logic in that, but for me, doing things too quickly often creates more stress later. This kind of English sounds thoughtful and flexible, and that is exactly the kind of fluency we are trying to build. Another important everyday skill is learning how to summarize your thoughts at the end of what you say, thoughts. Because in real life, people often speak for a little while and then give a simple conclusion, thoughts phrases, like, so overall, in the end, at the end of the day, basically, all in all, when it comes down to it, so I guess, can help your speaking feel more complete. For example, I've had a few difficult days recently, but overall, I think I'm handling things better than I used to. I still have a lot to improve, of course, but at the end of the day, I know I'm moving in the right direction. Basically, I'm trying to find a healthier balance between being productive and actually giving myself time to breathe. These small summary expressions are very useful because they help your speaking feel finished rather than cut off. Before we finish this part, I want to leave you with a longer reflection paragraph that you can use for speaking practice. The more I practice daily English, the more I understand that fluency is not only about reacting quickly, it's also about explaining my thoughts clearly, giving simple examples, and speaking in a way that feels honest to me. Some ideas are easier to express than others, of course, but I'm learning that when I slow down, stay connected to real life, and trust simple language, I can say much more than I used to believe. This paragraph holds a very important lesson. You do not need to force intelligence into your English. Your ideas already become stronger when you express them with clarity, balance, and natural rhythm. So as we continue from here, I want you to keep reminding yourself of something gentle but powerful. Real fluency grows when you speak from life, when you explain your thoughts, when you give examples, when you reflect on experience, when you talk about your goals honestly, and when you allow your English to sound human rather than artificial. That is how your voice becomes warmer, more flexible, and more confident. And step by step, sentence by sentence, you begin to feel that English is not only something you study, but something you can actually live in. Now let's continue by practicing something that can make a very big difference in the way you sound in English. Learning how to speak more naturally when you are sharing your opinions in everyday situations. Because daily life is full of moments when people ask what you think, what you prefer, what you would choose, what seems better to you, what feels right, what feels difficult. And many learners at the B1 and B2 level already have ideas in their minds. But the challenge is expressing those ideas in a way that feels smooth and natural. So, in this part, I want us to work on that together, not in a heavy way, but in a calm and useful way that feels close to real conversations. The kind of conversations you might have with a friend, a coworker, a classmate, or even just with yourself while thinking through a decision done. Let's start with something simple. Expressing an opinion without sounding too direct or too short, because in real life, people often soften their opinions a little, not because they are weak, but because that is how natural conversation often works. Instead of saying only, "This is good," or "This is bad," people often say, "I think this works quite well. I'm not sure that's the best idea. Personally, I'd probably do it differently." To be honest, I find that a little difficult. For me, that would be quite stressful. In my experience, a calmer approach usually works better. Do you notice how these sentences sound more thoughtful, more human, and more balanced? This is a very important part of sounding fluent. Because fluency is not only about what you say, it is also about how naturally you frame it. Imagine someone asks you, "Do you think it's better to stay busy all the time or take more breaks?" This is a normal everyday question, and you do not need a dramatic answer. You can say something natural like, "Personally, I think balance matters more than staying busy all the time. I understand why some people like to keep moving, but for me, too much constant activity usually makes me feel mentally tired after a while." That answer is not difficult, but it sounds mature. It sounds like you are thinking clearly, and it gives your English a natural rhythm. Or maybe you would say, "I think breaks are really important, especially if you want to stay focused for longer periods. Otherwise, even simple things can start to feel heavier than they really are." That is a beautiful daily life answer. Useful, clear, and very realistic. Now let's move into speaking about routines in a more developed way, because daily routines are one of the best topics for fluency practice. Everyone has routines. Everyone changes routines. Everyone struggles with routines sometimes. And people talk about them all the time. Maybe you want to talk about your morning routine, your work routine, your study routine, your evening habits, or the habits you want to improve. All of these are excellent for B1 and B2 speaking practice. For example, my routine is not perfect, but it's definitely better than it used to be. I'm trying to create a more stable rhythm for myself because I've noticed that I feel much calmer when I know what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. Some parts of my routine work well, but there are still a few areas where I lose time too easily. I've learned that if I start the day in a rushed way, the rest of the day often feels a little scattered too. Can you hear how natural these ideas sound? They are close to real life, and that is what makes them so powerful. Let's do a speaking flow based on routine. Imagine someone asks you, "Are you good at sticking to routines?" You might answer, "I'm better at it than I used to be, but I still have moments where I lose my rhythm, especially if my day starts in a stressful way," or "It depends on the routine. Honestly, if it feels realistic and helpful, I can usually stay consistent. But if it feels too strict, I start resisting it after a while." This is exactly the kind of answer that sounds real. You are not trying to sound perfect. You are describing your actual experience. And when you practice speaking like that, your English becomes more natural very quickly. Another very useful daily life skill is learning how to explain why something feels easy or difficult for you. Because people often talk about what they find challenging, what they find relaxing, what drains their energy, what gives them motivations. And if you can explain this clearly, you can have much richer conversations. For example, I find it hard to focus when there's too much noise around me because my attention keeps moving from one thing to another. For me, starting is often the hardest part. Once I begin, things usually feel more manageable. I actually enjoy quiet work because it gives me space to think clearly. Long days become difficult for me when I don't get enough time to reset mentally in the middle of them. These are very useful patterns because they help you speak beyond simple statements. They help you explain yourself. And explanation is one of the strongest signs of growing fluency. Now I want to take you into another important area, speaking naturally about social situations, because daily English is not only about being alone, it is also about being with other peoples. Maybe you are meeting someone, spending time with friends, talking to family, dealing with coworker, joining a group, or deciding whether you want social time or quiet time. All of this is real life, and all of it gives you powerful material for speaking practice. For example, I enjoy spending time with people, but only when I have enough energy for it. I like conversations that feel relaxed and genuine rather than forced. Sometimes I need a little quiet before I feel ready to be social. I don't mind group settings, but I usually speak more comfortably when the conversation is calm and not too fast. There are days when I really want connection, and there are other days when I just want some space to breathe. These ideas are simples, but they feel true, and that truth makes your English stronger. Let's imagine somebody asks you, "Do you enjoy social gatherings?" You could say, "It depends on the situation, honestly. If the atmosphere feels comfortable and the people are easy to talk to, I can enjoy it a lot, but if everything feels too loud or too rushed, I usually get tired quite quickly." Or maybe, "I enjoy them in small amounts. I like meaningful conversation, but I also know that too much social energy at once can leave me feeling drained." These are excellent B1 and B2 responses because they are balanced, reflective, and very natural. They do not sound memorized. They sound lived. Now let's focus on a speaking skill that many learners really need, learning how to talk through a problem in a calm and organized way. Because real life includes problems, small problems, practical problems, emotional problems, time problems, communication problems. And when you can describe a problem clearly, you sound much more capable and fluent. You can say things like, "The problem is that," what makes it difficult is. "The main issue for me is," what I've been struggling with is. It becomes complicated when. Part of the difficulty is that, for example, the main issue for me is not that I have too much to do. It's that I often think about everything at once instead of focusing on one thing properly. What makes it difficult is that I usually start with good intentions, but then something small distracts me and changes the direction of the whole day. Part of the difficulty is that I know what I should do, but I don't always manage to begin at the right time. Do you see how natural this is? You are not just saying there is a problem, you are explaining the shape of it. And that kind of speaking is very valuable. Let's build that into a longer paragraph. Lately, one thing I've been struggling with is staying mentally present while I'm doing something simple. It's not that the task itself is always difficult. The real problem is that my attention keeps moving ahead to other things I still need to do. And that makes even small tasks feel more tiring than they should. This is such useful English. It has reflection, clarity, and emotional honesty. And it sounds very close to natural daily conversations, especially at the B1 and B2 level. Another area that helps fluency a lot is learning how to offer simple suggestions in a natural way. Because conversations often include advice, ideas, recommendations, or possible solutions. Maybe you are helping a friend. Maybe you are talking about your own habits. Maybe you are thinking aloud about what would make life easier. Phrases like, maybe you could, it might help too. One thing that works for me is, you could always try. It's probably a good idea too. What sometimes helps are very common in everyday speech. For example, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it might help to focus on one thing at a time instead of looking at everything at once. One thing that works for me is starting with the easiest task first, just to build a little momentum. Maybe you could give yourself a short break and then come back to it with a clearer mind. These are beautiful daily life patterns because they sound kind, useful, and very natural. Now imagine a conversation where someone says, I've been feeling very distracted recently. You might respond, yeah, that happens sometimes. What sometimes helps is stepping away for a few minutes instead of forcing yourself to keep going when your mind is already exhausted. Nonce, or maybe you could try changing the way you begin your day. Sometimes one small change early on can affect the whole rhythm of everything else. This kind of response makes you sound engaged, thoughtful, and fluent, because you are not only understanding the other person, you are also contributing naturally to the conversations. I also want to help you speak more naturally when you are unsure about your own opinions, because this happens all the time in real life. Sometimes you are still thinking, sometimes you only partly agree, sometimes you feel mixed, and it is important to know how to express that naturally. You can say, I'm still figuring that out. I have mixed feelings about it. Part of me thinks one thing, but another part of me feels differently. I can see the advantages, but I can also see the downside. I haven't fully decided how I feel about that yet. These phrases are extremely useful because they sound real. Human beings are not always completely certain, and your English should have room for that uncertainty. For example, I have mixed feelings about being busy all the time. Part of me likes the sense of progress, but another part of me knows that too much pressure usually leads to burnout. Or, I can see the appeal of always staying productive, but I also think people need more rest than they sometimes admit. This is strong daily fluency, thoughtful, balanced, and emotionally honest. Let's move into another useful areas. Speaking naturally about things you are trying to avoid, because this is a very common part of daily life. People try to avoid stress, rushing, distractions, unhealthy habits, unnecessary conflict, wasting time, or overthinking, and this creates very useful speaking patterns. I'm trying not to. I've been avoiding. I don't want to fall into the habit of. I'm making an effort not to. I'm trying to stay away from, for example. I'm trying not to start my day by checking too many things at once because it affects my focus almost immediately. I've been avoiding late nights recently because they make the next day much harder than it needs to be. I'm making an effort not to overthink every small decision. These are everyday thoughts, and that is exactly why they are so useful for practice. Now let's do a fuller daily life paragraph that you could repeat aloud. These days, I'm trying to create a more balanced way of living, not a perfect one, just a healthier and more realistic one. I'm trying not to rush through everything. I'm trying not to make every small task feel urgent. And I'm also trying to listen more carefully to when I need rest instead of ignoring it until I feel completely drained. This is such a human paragraph. It sounds calm, reflective, and very real. And when you practice speaking paragraphs like this, your English begins to carry more emotional truth. Not just correct grammar. Another thing I want to show you is how useful it is to speak about what you have realized lately. Because daily English becomes richer when you include little moments of understanding. Maybe you realize you need more rest. Maybe you realize a habit is not helping you. Maybe you realize you feel better in a calmer environment. Phrases like, I've realized that tone. I've started to notice that. It's becoming clear to me that one thing I've learned is that I'm beginning to understand that are excellent for B1 and B2 fluency, for example. I've realized that I work much better when I stop trying to do everything perfectly. I've started to notice that my energy changes a lot depending on how I begin the day. One thing I've learned is that simple routines often help more than complicated plans. These ideas sound mature, but they are still built with simple English. And that is exactly what we want. Before we finish this part, I want to leave you with one longer reflection paragraph. The more I practice speaking about daily life, the more I understand that fluency is not only about speaking faster or knowing more words, it's also about being able to explain my opinions, describe my problems clearly, offer ideas, and talk honestly about the changes I'm trying to make in my life. Some thoughts still take me longer to express, of course, but I can already feel that simple, real English gives me more freedom than I used to believe. This is a very important idea. Freedom in speaking often grows from simplicity, not from complexity. When you trust simple language and when you connect it to real thought, your English begins to feel much more natural. So as we move forward together, keep reminding yourself that your voice does not need to sound perfect, to sound strong. It needs to sound real. It needs to sound connected to your life, your opinions, your routines, your difficulties, your small improvements, and your honest way of seeing things. That is how fluency grows in a steady and human way, not through pressure, but through meaningful practice. One clear thought after another. One honest sentence after another. Until speaking English begins to feel more like expression and less like performance. Now let's continue by working on something that helps your English feel much more natural in real life. Learning how to speak when things do not go exactly as expected. Because daily life is full of small interruptions, small changes, small inconveniences, and small surprises. Maybe your plan changes. Maybe someone arrives late. Maybe you forget something. Maybe the weather affects your day. Maybe you feel tired in the middle of something important. Maybe a conversation becomes a little awkward. All of these are normal parts of life. And if you can talk about them clearly and calmly in English, your fluency becomes much more practical and also much more real. Because fluent English is not only for smooth moments, it is also for imperfect moments. For the moments when you need to adjust, explain, react, and keep going without losing your voice. Let's start with changing plans. Because this happens all the time. You think your day will go one way, and then something shifts. Maybe not in a dramatic way, but enough to affect your routine. In daily conversation, people often say things like, I was supposed to, I had planned to, I meant to, I ended up. Things didn't go quite as planned. Something came up. I had to change my plans a little. These phrases are extremely useful because they help you describe real life very naturally. For example, I had planned to finish everything earlier, but something came up in the middle of the day, so I had to change my plans a little. Or, I was supposed to go out this evening, but in the end, I stayed home because I felt more tired than I expected. Or, I meant to be more productive today, but things didn't go quite as planned, So I'm just trying to make the best of what's left of the day. This is beautiful daily English, clear, honest, and very human. Now I want you to notice something important. When fluent speakers talk about a change of plan, they often include emotion or attitude, not just the fact. They might sound disappointed, relieved, calm, frustrated, understanding, or flexible. And that emotional layer makes the language feel more alive. For example, at first I was a little annoyed because I had already decided how I wanted the day to go, but after a while I just accepted it and adjusted. Or, honestly, I was a bit disappointed when things changed. But in the end, it gave me a chance to slow down more than I normally would. Or, it was slightly frustrating at the time, but looking back, it wasn't really a big problem. These are excellent patterns because they teach you how to speak not only about events, nonce, but also about your reaction to events. And that is a huge part of daily fluency. Let's practice with a small speaking exercise. Imagine someone asks you, "How did your day go?" But the truth is that your day did not go exactly the way you wanted. You could answer like this: "It was okay overall, but to be honest, I had to adjust a few things along the way. I had a plan in mind this morning, Said, but the day turned out a little differently than I expected. Or maybe, it wasn't a bad day, but it definitely didn't go in the direction I thought it would. I had to be a bit more flexible than usual." Those are very strong answers because they sound natural, balanced, and emotionally real. They do not sound too dramatic, and they do not sound too flat. They feel like the kind of thing a real person would say at the end of a normal day. Another important everyday skill is learning how to speak when you are a little confused or when something is unclear, because this happens constantly in real life. Maybe someone explains something too quickly. Maybe instructions are not clear. Maybe you are not sure what is happening next. Maybe you are trying to understand a situation that changed suddenly. And in those moments, it helps to have natural phrases ready, such as, "I'm not completely sure what's going on. I'm still trying to figure it out. I wasn't expecting that. I'm a little confused, to be honest. I thought it would be different. I need a moment to understand what happened." These phrases are not complicated, but they are very practical. For example, "I'm still trying to figure it out. Honestly, I thought everything was clear at first, but now I'm not so sure." Or, "I was a little confused at the beginning, but I think I understand the situation better now." Or, "I wasn't expecting that change, so it took me a moment to adjust." This is exactly the kind of English that helps you in real daily conversations, because life is often a little unclear, and good communication helps you move through that calmly. Now let's move into another very useful area: speaking when you need more time, because many daily situations involve time pressure. Maybe someone is waiting for an answer. Maybe you need a little more time to think. Maybe you cannot finish something immediately. And fluent speakers often know how to say this in a calm and natural way. Phrases like, "I need a bit more time," "I'm not ready yet," "I'm still working on it," "Give me a few more minutes," "I'm almost done," "I just need to finish one more thing," "I'll get back to you soon," are extremely useful. For example, "I'm still working on it, but I'm nearly there. I just need a little more time to think it through properly. I'm not ready to decide yet. I want to give it a bit more thought first. I can answer, but I'd rather think about it for a moment so I can explain it clearly." These phrases help you protect your time and your thinking space, and they make your English sound more mature and confident. Let's imagine a small real-life conversations. Someone asks you, "Have you made a decision yet?" And you answer, "Not completely. I've thought about it a lot, but I still need a bit more time before I feel sure." Or maybe, "I'm getting closer to a decision, but I don't want to rush it just for the sake of deciding quickly. These answers are excellent because they sound thoughtful, and they show that fluency is not about answering fast. It is about answering clearly and honestly. Another area that can really strengthen your daily English is learning how to speak when something feels inconvenient. Not terrible, not dramatic, just inconvenient. Maybe you forgot an item. Maybe a place is closed. Maybe your internet is slow. Maybe you are running behind schedules. Maybe you are tired at the wrong moment. These are everyday inconveniences, and daily conversation is full of them. Natural phrases here include, "That's a bit inconvenient. It's not ideal." "That made things a little harder. It threw me off a bit. It slowed me down. It wasn't a huge problem, but it took longer than I expected." For example, "It wasn't a huge problem, but it did slow me down more than I expected. That little change threw me off a bit, especially because I was already trying to stay focused. It's not ideal, but I'll work around it. It made things a little harder, although in the end I still managed." These are wonderful expressions for B1 and B2 fluency because they sound very natural, and they help you talk about ordinary problems without sounding extreme. Now let's practice speaking about energy and mood, because these two things affect almost every daily conversations. How you feel physically, how you feel mentally, whether you are focused, whether you are calm, whether you feel present. And strong daily English often includes honest language about this. Phrases like, "I'm a little low on energy today. I'm not feeling as focused as usual. My mood is okay, but my energy is low. I feel better now than I did earlier. I started the day feeling good, but later I lost momentum," are all very useful. For example, "I'm a bit low on energy today, so I'm trying not to push myself too hard. I'm okay overall, but I can feel that my focus isn't as steady as it normally is. My mood has improved a little since this morning, which is a relief." This kind of English is powerful because it lets you speak honestly about your state without using complicated language.